Okay, so this video, chapter 3 is a continuation of chapter 2. We're gonna continue talking about demand for health. So last time in chapter number 2, we talked about demand for healthcare is downward sloping, which means that people do make decisions on how much healthcare they want to consume based on the price. And it is downward sloping, although it's a little bit inelastic. And then our next question is, do people choose their own health if they do choose their healthcare? This question is asking, is health something that happens to us, or do we choose it? Do we have control over it? Okay, so we are going to use the Grossman model to explore this question. Okay, so in Grossman model, there are 3 roles that in an economist perspective that health plays in our life. The first one is it's a consumption good. Just like an ice cream or video games, it gives us utility directly. The second role is an input into production. We think of that as skills. The more we have, the more productive we are. And health is the same. The more healthy we are, the more productive we are. The third role is a form of stock or capital. Think of that as an investment that you put some cost today and you get some return in the future. Okay, so then how does a person value the money today and the money in tomorrow? It's going to play a role in how he's going to make the decision of investing in health today. Okay, so we'll talk about the second and the third role in the future, but today we'll focus on the first one, which is a consumption goods. So health as a consumption goods, we're talking about that they will enter the utility function directly. So think of a single period utility function, UT, that is a function of HT and XT. HT is the level of health, XT is home goods. Think of them as everything else that is not health related, but can contribute directly to utility, such as video games, time with friends, or movie tickets. Here, note that health is not healthcare. Healthcare, we have discussed the last chapter. It means different healthcare services, inpatient, outpatient, ER, all of those things that we receive. But health here is more of a healthiness, how healthy a person is as HT. Okay, so healthcare is not explicitly in the utility function. So for example, getting a vaccine does not provide utility directly. Okay, because getting a vaccine, there is some side effects, there's at least some soreness, but staying healthy does. So staying healthy is a component of the utility function. It gives utility directly, but getting vaccines provides utility indirectly. Okay. Okay, so then we are going to look at 2 graphs that shows increasing utility as a function of expanding goods and expanding stock of health. So let's take a look at the simpler one, the one on the right-hand side. So let's focus on x equals to x0 first. Okay, so this is a line that is increasing. X-axis is H, health, y-axis is utility. So this line shows us that utility increase as health increases, and utility increases slower as health increases, which we have a word for that, that is marginal utility decreases as health increases. Okay, so this is pretty standard utility that we've seen in microeconomics class. we have increasing utility and decreasing marginal utility. Okay, which makes sense because when we are very sick, getting a little bit healthier will make a lot of change. But when we're relatively healthy, being somewhat healthier will not give as much increase in utility. Okay, so then we compare this with another line on we compare that with another line on the top. Okay, that is x equals to x1. Okay, so this one is if we draw a vertical line, we can see that if we hold the level of health constant, let me draw a line. If we hold the level of health constant, the marginal utility or the utility that we get from this level of health is different when the level of consumption in home goods is different. Okay, so if we have more home goods, then the same level of health give us more utility. Okay. I think a good example will be let's say having one ice cream and two ice cream. Okay. The same kind of health is gonna give us more utility if we have 2 units of ice cream. Okay. All right, so then we can swap the position of health and home goods. So that would be on the left-hand side. X-axis now is X, home goods. Y-axis is Y-axis is utility, and we have different lines that represent different level of healthiness. H1 is the lowest, H3 is the highest, and we see the same pattern: increasing utility, decreasing marginal utility. Also, a higher level of health a higher level of health then the same level of goods is gonna give us higher level of utility. Okay. All right. So we can actually put them in another way, which is the next slide. So we can put health, or to be exact, quantity of health we consume and quantity of X that we consume in Y-axis and X-axis. We can actually see that different combination of quantity of health and quantity of X gives us different level of utility. We have 3 utility line here that along this line, all the combination has the same level of utility. Okay, so then if we have a budget constraint that comes from our income and the price ratio, then we're able to do a utility maximization. Okay, so this means that we do make a choice on the health that we consume. Okay, as long as there is a price ratio between health and X. Okay, again, I have to remind that the price for health now is not the price for healthcare. It's not how much we pay for insurance. It's actually, think of how much we pay for being healthy, staying healthy. Okay. So then, if we have a budget constraint, let's say, if I draw a budget constraint like this. Okay. Let's say if I draw a budget constraint that looks like this, then if I want to maximize my utility, I'm gonna buy a combination of health and home goods at point D. Okay, that's a engine point. Okay, and then that would decide how much health or how healthy I am. So basically, Grossman used this graph, is trying to show that there is a trade-off between quantity of health and quantity of, or okay, to be exact, quantity of healthiness and quantity of home goods that we consume. And when we do maximization, we are choosing our health. Okay, health doesn't happen to us. Health is something we decide, and it's gonna be affected by the following information. Okay, so health, it's gonna come from medical care, other inputs, time. It's gonna come from lifestyle, environment, nutrition, exercise. We think of all of these as our marginal cost for getting a certain level of health. And if we think of marginal cost equals to marginal profit or marginal gain, then we are able to solve a certain amount of quantity of health that we are actually getting. Okay, so here it's going back to medical care spending, but I think Grossman model is more about quantity of health that we are trying to consume. Okay, so is there evidence that supports the Grossman model? Okay, yep, this graph is disease, medical care, and health. This one is actually a production function for 3 different diseases. I think this is a complementary slide for the previous slide. Okay. So here are some evidence that supports the Grossman model, that health is a consumption goods. So first we need measures of health status. We need measures of healthiness. Yeah, again, healthiness. So the first one we look at is usually mortality. This is the rate of death or probability of death at different ages. Usually it's expressed as number of deaths for a given population. Let's say a certain number of deaths per 1,000 or per 10,000 people. Usually mortality has to be specified at a certain age because the average age or the demographic, kind of like the age distribution of the population is changing all the time. So we want to have an age-adjusted mortality rate to be able to explain or compare better. And the second one is called morbidity. Morbidity is a broader range of statistics. So it calculates the incidence probability of all different kind of units and disability among a population. The third one is quality of life. This one is more subtle. It has a lot of measures. Sometimes people just measure it by handing out surveys and ask people to self-report different aspects of quality of life. Okay, so this is a graph of mortality in US. First, we want to look at the decreasing darker blue line. Age-adjusted death rate, it is decreasing since 1935 all the way to 2010. Okay, but crude death rate, which is the green line, is actually staying kind of stable, although it's slightly decreasing. The lighter blue line number of deaths is increasing simply because, so this is a story that death rate is decreasing, but as the population is getting older, so number of deaths is increasing, and crude death doesn't show much change. Okay. If we split that by gender, we can see that both male and female age-adjusted death rate is decreasing. The decreasing speed of different gender varies. So we have a ratio of male and female rate, it is increasing all the way up to 90, 80, okay? And now it's decreasing again. Now it kind of plateaus at 1.4, okay? If we split that with race, this one is actually infant mortality, okay? If we split infant mortality rate by race, we see that all different races are decreasing. The orange, light blue, and green lines are decreasing. It decreased faster in the early years, and up to the 2000s, the decrease has slowed. There is a major race gap here, which has decreased a little bit, but remains there. So we can see that if we look at black to white ratio, it has been going ups and downs, but mostly there is an upward trend from 1935 to 2007. Okay. Infant mortality is usually if we look at the reasons why infant mortality rate is decreasing, usually people refer that to prenatal care, that if mothers receive prenatal care, then the infants are more likely to survive. So this is a graph of percentage of mothers receive late or no prenatal care. And this ratio has been decreasing broadly, although there is a different scale of measuring if you're using a different kind of data. Okay. All right. So this one kind of like explains why there's a decreasing infant mortality rate. Okay, because there's a decreasing number of mothers, or decreasing percentage of mothers that doesn't receive prenatal care. The next graph is an infant mortality rate by state in 2007. The darker states have a higher infant mortality rate. The babies here are more likely to die, versus the lighter states, the babies are more likely to survive. Okay, if you are familiar with the demographic across the United States, you can see that places with higher income, higher education, they're more likely to have a lower infant mortality rate versus the other way. Okay. The next table looks at death rate by age. This is aggregate annual death rate per 100,000 persons in different age group from 1985 to 2007. We can see that across all age groups, the death rate is decreasing. Okay. The next table is a 10 causes of death in 1980 and 2006. Okay, so I think this graph is interesting to look at actually. There are some disease that remains top reasons, top causes of death. So causes of death, there is an indirect cause and direct cause, and here we're more talking about direct cause. So the first three are heart disease, malignant neoplasms. So this one, if I use a word that people have heard about more often, it's cancer. Okay, so the first one is heart disease, second one is cancer, third one is cerebrovascular disease. If you haven't heard about it, it usually refers to blood issue in the brain. So something like a stroke belongs to this category. And we see that the top three remains the same after 26 years. Okay. There are some changes in the 4th to the 10th one. I think it's interesting. Unintended injuries was number 4th in 1980. Now it becomes number 5th in 2006. Chronic, some chronic disease is chronic obstructive disease, chronic liver disease is number 5 and 8. We don't see them anymore. That's good. Pneumonia and influenza was number 6 in 1980. We don't see them. We don't see them in 2006, although we see chronic lower respiratory disease in number 4 in 2006. What else? Oh, influenza. Oh, sorry. Influenza was number 8 in 2006. We don't see diabetes mellitus anymore. We don't see suicide anymore in the top 10 in 2006, which is good. What is new in 2006 is Alzheimer's, okay, and septicemia. Okay. So that reflects some technology change. Okay. We can also look at the next table. This is leading cause of death by age group. Okay. The previous table is top 10 causes of all ages. How about break them down into different ages? So this is actually several tables combined. Okay, so table 2 and 2 is ages 5 to 14 and ages 15 to 24. Percent of violence, which include accidents, suicide, homicide, is 44 and 75.3%. I assume a lot of you are among the second group. So if a person die in this age group, then there's a really high chance that it comes from a violence-related disease. A violence-related cause. If we go up the ages 25 to 34, ages 35 to 44, or all the way to ages 85 and above, we can see that percent of violence is decreasing. But if we look at leading cause of death by for ages 65 and over, this graph is relatively the same with the total graph that we've seen, because the majority of death comes from these age group. So yes, the first 3 goes back to heart disease, cancers, and stroke. Actually, stroke is more likely for age 85 or above, but lower respiratory disease is higher than stroke for 65 to 84. Okay, so don't need to remember these. We just need to know that these are the top leading causes of death. Okay. This table, this figure is actual causes of death. Okay, so I would say actual causes is not it's not an accurate word to say, but more like a root cause. Okay, but it's okay to call it actual causes, okay, or indirect causes. Both are fine. So in 1990 to 2000, the so-called actual causes of death, the top 2 are tobacco, obesity, and exercise. I believe here is non-exercise, okay, or in-exercise. Okay, so these 2 are the top 2, and it's much higher than all the others. Okay. Um, let's see. I would say we can see that tobacco problem has actually increased from 1990 to 2000, but not as much as the increase in obesity and non-exercise, okay, which see a huge increase. What else has a huge increase? Motor vehicle related death as well. And there are lots of other categories that have witnessed decrease, like alcohol abuse, microbial agents, toxic agents, firearms, sexual behavior, illicit drug use. So these are some aspects that have witnessed improvement. Okay. So the biggest problem, obesity. Okay, and looks like overweight and obesity trends in the United States are increasing in 1960 to 2008. Obesity has a very huge increase. Extremely obesity has also increased a lot, but in this graph is kind of deceiving. Is if you think of it as increase as percentage, it probably is as severe as the problem of obese. While overweight remains relatively the same. Okay, so this is interesting. Think of that as a proportion of the population that has remains the same if they're overweight, but has hugely increased if it's obese or extremely obese. And I believe that the latter two groups are more problematic when a pandemic happens, or just in general in the later stage of life. So why obesity is on the rise? There are many reasons. The first one is technological change. Calorie expended at work decreases. Think of people have less of labor work, but more of a static work that you sit in the office, so you don't burn as much calories. The second one is that the food prices has dropped, even though we're experiencing some severe inflation right now. But in general, over the last several decades, food prices have dropped a lot. Value of time has increases, which makes people shift to faster foods. And faster foods, even though some of them are healthy, a lot of them are not as healthy. The third one is density. The fourth one is density of restaurants per capita has increases. This reflects actually increasing income. And something interesting that I've just read online is that the proportion that a restaurant serves in the United States has also increased for each meal. Okay, so this is a trend that's happening consciously or unconsciously. And we actually have one entire chapter at the end of the semester that we will talk about obesity. Okay. So let's talk about the second problem, tobacco use. So why do people smoke? Because they will be happier. Not everyone is happier if they smoke. At least I am not. I think smoking is choking. Okay, but smoking is gives direct utility to some people. Okay, and some people have insufficient information about the harm from smoking, and this reflects on the fact that education and smoking are inversely correlated. Okay. Another problem is alcohol. Alcohol is not as severe as tobacco, but still very bad in terms of in terms of in terms of its consequence, because there's a different effect depending on the type of drinking. So usually if social drinking or light drinking is fine, or even conventional, but heavy drinking has a very bad effect on health. It can cause liver disease, cancer, heart disease. And drunk driving can also cause accidents, which can be a cause for mortality. Here are some studies, empirical studies. They show that heavy drinking of beer and distilled spirit increases mortality from all causes and cancer. There is a mixed result for coronary heart disease. Risk of cancer would doubled for heavy drinkers, and actually wine reduces all-cause death by 20 and heart disease by 50%. Okay. I haven't read I have not read the results for the fourth point, but I think this study should be carefully interpreted. Okay. Okay, the next graph, more on educated drinking. Okay. So this is education and drinking. Actually, people who drink more is the college graduate, and people who drink least is the less than high school, we call high school dropouts. But it's important to note that the thing that makes the difference is heavy alcohol use. So heavy alcohol use is kind of similar between less than high school, and some college, but lowest for college graduates. Binge use is also similar across the different group, slightly lower in college graduated. So we can think of this as more educated people will drink more, but it's less heavy. Okay. This is actually surprising for me because I believe I drink much less than what I believe is non-college educated group. Okay. Okay, the next one is alcohol and earnings. Okay, so this explains what happens in the former graph. There's evidence that shows moderate drinking may be associated with improvement in earnings, while heavy drinking, particularly chronic alcoholism, lowers lifetime earnings, and this most notably through reduced labor force participation. Because from all of these evidence, we came to the conclusion that there are several determinants of health. There's price of medical care. Okay, when we try to maximize our decision on medical care, we are looking at marginal utility for medical care equals to marginal cost, which is the price of medical care. Second part is wages. Okay, wages is the income in our budget constraints. There is also age. Age plays the major role in the chances of death or determinants of health. Last one is education. How informed is people on making a decision on their health? So here is some more evidence for health and education. People find that higher education can lead to better health. If we look at obesity, prevalence of overweight and obesity, we can see that if education increases, okay, from the left to the right, there's higher and higher education. In terms of women, the prevalence of overweight and obesity decreases, versus men, it actually increases all the way to associates, and then it starts decreasing from associates to bachelor's to graduate degrees. Okay. The next one is some review studies that look at determinants of health. It seems like no one has a very absolute answers of that. The answers of here is more of a comparison, but people can see that the number one factor is behaviors. So this includes how much exercise you do, includes how much alcohol you drink, if you smoke, if you take drugs. So these takes 50% or 40% or 36 or 30%. Okay. And the second one is social circumstances. Social circumstances we'll talk more about in the next chapter, but some studies doesn't even include that. Some studies think it's 15%, some studies think it's 40%. Okay, so is it more of a determinant or more of a correlation? There is more discussion about that to be have in the next chapter. There's also environment, genetics. I believe people have more and more evidence about genetics these days, but it's also unclear how much percentage that it plays in our health. Okay. And surprisingly, medical care is the least important among all of these studies. Okay. All right, this one says that well-educated individuals are more efficient producers of health. For example, college graduates benefit more than a high school dropout. And how do we explain that? So if we look back at the Grossman model, we know that better health among the educated, we know that the educated has better health. We know that as people age, there will be a declining health. So Grossman model has predicted these trends. All right, the last part is the conclusion. Okay, so going back to our question, is health something that happened to us or is chosen? And Grossman says that it's chosen. Okay, in fact, we even chose when we die. Okay, Grossman believed that if determinants of death is decided by how much alcohol you drink, how much you smoke, how much exercise you do, then you did make a decision on when you will die. Okay, although it's not like specifically which day, but all of these behaviors, all of these decisions that has been made in the lifetime has come to this final results that people has made the decision or on. Okay, so while that may seem a little bit extreme or far-fetched, Grossman model is a useful tool for understanding the roles and trade-off of health. So then the next chapter, we are going to use the Grossman model to understand empirical findings about the relationship between socioeconomic status and health.